Hello, and welcome to our newest build guide video. Attribute stacking is quite old concept by now, and with the introduction of the Widowhail unique bow it become even more powerful than ever. It almost triples the bonuses of your quiver, which in the case of the unique poised prism quiver covers all your base damage and most elemental resistances at once. This quiver grants you flat damage for every 10 attributes you get. On top of the regular benefits you get from them, like bonus maximum life or accuracy, we also use the combination of Iron Will and Crown of Eyes to massively increases all our attack damage, while the Inquisitor Ascendancy boosts critical strike chance per lowest strength or intelligence. We also use various modifiers that grant increased damage per lowest attribute. It is a very flexible build, as you can use basically any bow skill you want. For the sake of this guide, we decided to make a build revolving around the new Manaforged arrow support, which triggers all linked bow skills at once when you spend enough mana with any other bow skill. If you reduce the mana cost of Manaforged skills all the way down to 0, or turn them into life costs instead, you can trigger them by spending just as much as 1 point of mana. In such case, all you need to do is a very quick tap of the Scourge arrow to release absolutely massive amounts of projectiles, all automatically targeted at close-by enemies. You can trigger 5 bow skills in each 6 link, but we find the best results with 3 active skills and 3 support gems in each setup. The Scourge arrow is mandatory as we need a channeling skill, as it is not affected by the reduced cost of skills modifiers purposefully crafted on our rings. You will have a lot of maximum life thanks to all the strength you have. Determination and some armor grants you enough physical mitigation, not to mention the Berserk buff, which grants 20% damage reduction while active. This build has excellent clear speed thanks to amazing movement speed and area of effect coverage. Single target damage is highly correlated to your attributes and thus your budget. The potential of attribute stacking is very high. You will need plenty of attributes to cover issues like accuracy rating or crit cap, but once you fix that, it is just purely more damage scaling. You should have around 20 divine orbs before starting this build. This build uses a lot of unique items, which makes the gearing a bit easier process. Most of them are rather cheap, but you will have to pay extra for useful corrupted implicits or perfect rolls on their modifiers. It has only one modifier, but a very powerful one. The bonuses follow the common principle of being rounded down, so you should use a version with at least a 234% roll. The next breakpoint would be at the perfect 250% roll, however, a good Crucible tree outperforms that bonus. The Poised Prism is a core item that grants you all the flat damage we get in this build. Elemental resistances and corrupted implicits are also multiplied by your bow, so take that into consideration when buying one. Crown of Eyes grants useful modifiers such as accuracy rating or leech, but it is used mostly to convert the strength damage scaling with the use of Iron Will Keystone. An enchant for mana reservation efficiency is necessary to run all recommended auras at their maximum level. Chaos Spirit converts your life regeneration into rage, so you can use the Berserk buff more often and for a longer duration. You can still leech life or regenerate energy shield, so life sustain is not a problem. Another important item to scale your damage. It boosts all your attributes and provides tons of damage per your lowest one. You can use Attribute Catalyst to easily get 18% increased attributes. Sikawal's Nest is the best armor for this build. It grants a lot of attributes and mana reservation. It doesn't have a life modifier, so you can use the Life Mastery to get a 15% increased life instead. Eyes of the Great Wolf is a great way to massively boost your attributes and get some other useful modifiers. Life regeneration seems to be the best one as it improves the uptime on Berserker buff. You should always use the Vengeant Cascade Anoint as it doubles your damage output. Astramentus can be used as a decent budget option, especially when you still have low base attributes. However, due to the price of an anointment, it is probably better to get straight for the Great Wolf Eyes. Thread of Hope saves you a ton of passive points as it allows you to pick up the best notables without traveling there. It lowers your resistances slightly, but it isn't that hard to overcome. Finding a good lethal pride is not an easy task, but it is definitely worth it. It can greatly improve your strength, grant a chance to intimidate enemies and deal double damage, or improve your life regeneration for better berserk sustain. Socketing split personality in a proper jewel socket will grant you almost 70 of each attribute. You should pick the attributes you lack the most to balance them out. You can use only 2 of such jewels. Getting chaos resistances is quite expensive on this build, as resistances compete with attributes on the suffix modifiers. You can use this combo to get the Searing Purity notable and receive 90% of chaos damage as elemental, which should be capped anyway. You could also use a Watcher's Eye to get some chaos resistances through the Purity of Elements, and pair it with an offensive modifier for precision, or another defensive one with determination or vitality. You use only a few rare items. Stacking attributes is your top priority, but getting maximum life and lacking resistances is also important. You will need flat cost reduction on both of your rings, and potentially 15% reduced mana costs of skills obtainable through rare jewels, but the latter can be skipped through the alternative quality on the Manaforged arrow gem at the cost of cooldown recovery rate. Your boots should grant you at least 30% movement speed, some bonus maximum life, and as many attributes as you can get. It can also cover your resistance if you really need them. It is also a great source of onslaught if you are comfortable with your damage already. Both your rings should grant lots of attributes, and have a modifier that reduces the cost of non-channeling skills by 7. It is also good to have some maximum life or chaos resistances here. It is best to craft one using essences on a fractured ring. Bonus to all attributes offers lower value than a singular one, but can greatly help with balancing them out. Your jewels should boost your maximum life and grant a total of 15% reduced cost of skills across 3 jewels. Other than that, look for critical strike multiplier, lacking resistances and accuracy rating, or more attributes. You can get tons of attributes with proper jewels. They should provide a bonus to spell damage so you can benefit more from your helmet. They should have no notables, instead have at least 25% increased effect of small passives, +4 to all attributes, and at least +5 to single attribute you lack the most. Dying Sun adds 2 extra projectiles for all your attack to greatly improve your clear speed potential. It has low uptime, so it is not that useful in longer fights. Bottled Faith is a flask that grants a lot of critical strike chance against enemies standing in the consecrated ground. It also considerably increases the damage you deal against them. For your remaining magic flasks we recommend using Granite Flask with armor rating bonus, Quicksilver with critical strike chance bonus, and Life Flask with bleeding removal. All attacks are triggered at once, but each skill has a global cooldown so you can't use it twice in 2 setups. Burning Arrow is absolutely the best skill for this setup. It has the greatest added damage effectiveness of all bow skills balanced by its slow base attack speed, which is irrelevant in a trigger setup. Ice Shot is the second best skill. It has high damage effectiveness, a good area of effect, and has some built-in damage which helps at lower investments. Lightning Arrow has lower scaling than other skill options but has a great shock multiplier which boosts all your other skills. It also has a great area of effect coverage. Alternative quality on Manaforged arrows and inspiration is required here to lower mana costs enough. Alternatively, you can use the life tap support to ignore that problem completely, but it can be quite uncomfortable in the long run. You should aim for precisely 1 mana cost on Burning Arrow to generate inspiration charges. The second setup is much more flexible. Ensnaring Arrow is a surprising pick, but it simply has good damage effectiveness. However, it won't inflict ensnare debuff due to pierce. Puncture is chosen for the same reason as always, it has good scaling with your added damage. Be aware of the added physical damage on this skill, it can be dangerous on maps with a physical reflect modifier. Blast Rain is the only skill on the list that doesn't benefit from the Vengeant Cascade. It has low damage effectiveness but can hit 8 times, or even more if you invest in additional arrows further. Those skills are less important so you can save some currency on the alternative quality if you still lack gear. If you are not close to the crit cap, use the increased critical strike support instead. Frenzy deals a relatively small amount of damage but grants frenzy charges on hit. Thanks to this setup, it will also generate power charges. Without the inspiration support, it will trigger less often, but it is still enough to keep your charges at all times. Scourge Arrow is the only channeling bow skill in the game. It should have a higher mana cost than your other non-channeling skills, and it will instantly consume your mana when you start channeling it. It also does a considerable amount of damage, even without any support gems. Sniper's Mark improves the damage you deal with projectile skills and causes them to split. If you still have a low critical strike chance, use the Assassin's Mark instead. The mark on hit will trigger your marks automatically on every rare and unique enemy. Determination grants a lot of armor and allows a better scaling for your physical mitigation. If you lack the enchant on your helmet, you could use the Petrified Blood aura instead. This aura gives a lot of elemental resistances which compete with attributes on your gear. It also grants full elemental ailment avoidance. Vitality grants lots of life regeneration, which is then converted into rage. It reserves a flat amount of mana, which you have plenty of thanks to the intelligence. Precision grants accuracy rating and critical strike chance. Might be not needed if you have a lot of dexterity. The Enlightened support is not needed if you have the enchant on your helmet and picked relevant passives. Frostblink is an instant teleport that leaves a chilled ground in both locations. It has a low range but can be used while channeling. Using it nearby enemies will lower its cooldown considerably, but be careful to not get stuck as it has only one charge. Berserk is a buff which grants you tons of movement speed, damage, and extra mitigation against all damage types. It consumes rage at an accelerating rate. Every passive skill point is very valuable for this build, so you should kill all bandits in the second act's quest. You don't need freeze avoidance, so you can pick the Soul of Era Kali to reduce the damage over time you take. It also buffs your rage generation sometimes. For your minor Pantheon power, we recommend Soul of Ralakesh or Soul of Ryslatha. The second one is especially useful if you often fight enemies with insane amounts of regeneration. Unfortunately, you can't rely on your quiver to level up as it requires high level to equip. The passive tree is rather unhelpful too, so you should use a leveling setup that is strong on its own. You will travel across the whole passive tree, but in this case it is not wasted at all as it will grant you a lot of attributes. The Ironwool Keystone turns your melee damage bonus from strength into a spell damage bonus, which you then convert into a generic attack damage boost at 150% effectiveness. The Magebane Keystone is very close, and it will grant you tons of spell suppression thanks to the dexterity you stack anyway. On the way to the Ranger's side of tree, you will pick up the Attribute Mastery that grants tons of damage per lowest attribute, and a few important bonuses for your critical strikes. You should also pick up additional Pierce for your projectiles so they can hit an additional time when they return. 2 bonus projectiles for your attacks are necessary for comfortable clear. Most of those nodes can be easily picked up with the Thread of Hope Jewel. Because we are so far from the Templar starting area there, the split personality jewels are very effective and can grant you tons of attributes. Getting a high critical strike chance is vital for your damage, as it is the only way to deal with elemental resistances on your enemies thanks to the Inquisitor ascendancy. It is also what helps you achieve that goal through massive bonuses to critical strike chances. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or want to see a particular build, please let us know in the comments. Have a good day, and see you next time.